Well, shares of Manulife are higher today after profit in the company's latest quarter topped expectations, and on news the insurer is hiking its dividend by 11%. The company's Canadian operations were the main driver, boosted in part by higher demand on travel insurance following the post-pandemic travel boom. Earlier today, I spoke with Gori, the president and CEO of Manulife, on that. Have a listen.
Two things that we're seeing is people have realized that when they travel, they probably should get insurance. That's true for insurance more broadly. The pandemic has really brought to the fore that people probably don't have enough coverage and that they need to have greater protection. So we're seeing a phenomenon of people looking to insurance, travel, health, life, and more broadly as a key part of their need proposition. And then clearly also after having been in lockdown, people are getting out and traveling again, and I think that's also been a driving force for what we're seeing in our numbers.
You referenced Asia, so let's dig a little deeper there, and I think one of the biggest global market stories with respect to China has been the reopening. How's it going to play out? What do you see happening?
We're optimistic is the general takeaway I'd leave you with. Again, 22 was a challenging year for Asia as it relates to COVID restrictions, which quite interestingly was very different to 21. In 21, we actually saw Asia perform quite well with very limited restrictions in place, which was quite the opposite of what we saw in North America. Both Canada and the US saw significant restrictions that impacted sales in 21. It was almost the inverse in 22, with Asia being more directly impacted and actually a big bounce back in both Canada and the US. So again, a big positive that comes through our diversity of our franchise. More recently, we saw a pivot away from COVID zero, and that really fills us with optimism as we think about the full year of 23 and markets getting back to more of a normalization through less restrictions in place that will limit people's travel and movement.
One of the things about the Asian market, you often say it, people know it if they know the Manulife business, is you have operated in that market for a very long time. So you've seen a lot of different cycles, but every day, especially in the markets, there's a fresh conversation around geopolitical tensions. What is it like operating in those environments, given some of those headlines we see each day?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And one of the benefits that we have is that we have operated in Asia for a very long period of time. In fact, more than 125 years. That's a significant source of value for us because we do understand that there are various cycles and challenges that we'll experience from time to time. And they may be geopolitical, they may be social, they may be environmental or even economic. So we've always played the long game. That's put us in good stead with consumers, with employees, with key regulators. And that's typically the way we think about our business. We are there for the long term. We're there to support our customers. And that's no different in the current environment.
Meanwhile, Roy, the last time we spoke to you, it was in the early days of the pandemic. Obviously, that led to a lot of new thinking in all industries about where we work and how we work. Things are a lot more normal these days, but in terms of how you're operating in this remote work environment, what is the strategy at Manulife?
Yeah. Well, firstly, we're really grateful that we invested significant dollars before the pandemic into digitizing our business and helping ensure that we could operate in a more remote way. So that was a blessing, not that we had any foresight into the pandemic, but that investment really meant that the transition into a work from home environment was actually able to happen in a very seamless way. Many thanks to the great resilience of our people. The other big thing that we learned through the pandemic years was that people actually could work remotely and we could get our jobs done. We could service customers, sell product, and continue to create value. So that was obviously a tremendous learning, and through that, employees have told us that they actually like that flexibility. So for us, we've thought long and hard about what does that mean towards the policy that we want to have going forward. And we'll always now have a policy of remote working where we give that flexibility to our employees, but we're not walking away from the idea that getting people together and having them come into the office to collaborate is going to be something that we're going to focus on. So that is going to continue to be a really important part of our remote work or return to office policy. And we have been in office at least for the last year for a certain number of days during the week. And actually our people are telling us that they really like that. They don't mind the flexibility of working from home for a few days, but they love the fact that they can come into the office, they can collaborate, socialize, create with their colleagues, and that they're getting a lot of value from that.
You know, one of the things about the pandemic as a pause point, it allowed us to think about where we want Canada to be going. You've now been in this CEO role for more than 5 years, and a lot of times chief executives get asked about Canada's competitiveness, our place in the world. What are your observations on that front?
Yeah, look, I think Canada has a very unique opportunity for global competitiveness. It's a tremendous marketplace with fantastic talent and a really robust legal and regulatory infrastructure. So as a company that's global, perhaps one of the most global financial institutions in Canada, we benefit from having a home market here that allows us to leverage this market as a foundation. I'm generally optimistic about the Canada market in its own right. I think there's tremendous growth opportunity here for our sector in particular, but more broadly for the economy. And I feel that, again, you know, this is I guess a foundation for us as we think about other markets that we operate in.
And the pandemic itself also opened the door to more conversations around things like mental health. There are a lot of Canadians asking the questions about things like what benefits they actually have. Do they need more benefits? And I know as an organization, you're watching those trends as well. What do you think the road ahead should be on that front, particularly for employers?
Well, you raise a really important point, and we have seen an increase in mental health related claims. In fact, for the population of people that we serve in the group benefits part of our business in Canada, those between ages of 18 to 34, we've seen a 27% increase in mental health claims in 2022 versus 2021. So this is a significant increase. Now, what's driving that? There's a few different forces at work. The first is that people are much more comfortable talking about mental health issues. I think that's a really good thing. I think the fact that people are willing to actually declare that they've got a problem, that they need help, is something that is actually a big positive and allows us to actually work with them and their employer to actually solve the problem. So that's certainly one factor. The other factor is that we're in a very stressful environment. You talked about the economic uncertainty that exists. That's creating stress for people. And for some people, actually, the work from home environment creates a lot of stress. And, you know, operating out of your basement where you're not interacting with other people creates its own stress in a different way. So this is something that we're spending a lot of time on. We're obviously there to support our clients through the benefits that we provide, but we're also trying to get ahead of the curve and create, you know, proactive solutions to help employers and employees deal with this growing problem.
Now, you've got to navigate what's happening today and these trends that are emerging in the short term. But there's also the need for long-term planning. And the subject of climate change is one that you have been very focused on, prioritizing. People might not know Manulife's ties, for example, to timberland. Right. Can you walk us through what the long-term game plan is on that front?
You're absolutely right. Our focus on climate change and the broader ESG agenda is a huge priority for us. You know, I'm proud to say that we're already net positive in our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, i.e. we sequester more carbon than we emit, which is actually not very common in our industry. And over and above that achievement, we've already declared that we want to reduce our gross emissions by 2035 by 35%. So this is a really big focus for us. We've made tremendous progress to date, but we're also working towards improving our agenda and actually creating greater sustainability, not just for our customers, but quite frankly, for the broader population.
So you're obviously looking to the long term, spending towards that. We talked about competitiveness in this country. It's no secret that Ottawa has unveiled some fresh taxations directed at the financial services community. Part of that is tied to recouping pandemic profits. We've also seen an initiative on stock buybacks, the idea that the government would like to see companies investing more of their capital in people and long-term initiatives. So given what you've said about what Manulife is already working on, how do you feel about some of those tax measures that Ottawa has been focusing on?
Well, you're never going to hear me declare that I'm delighted to see taxes going up, but obviously taxes are necessary, and we clearly work with government and various other bodies to understand how we can continue to pay our rightful share, but at the same time ensure that the taxes that we provided are hopefully directed to the right parts of society as well. So, you know, again, as a good corporate citizen, we do our fair share to pay our taxes, and that's absolutely critical and important. And we'll continue to do so.